Part 38. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 374. The 5 sharp claws are like 5 blood-red crystals, showing a translucent crystal beauty, like 5 red crystal side knives piercing Garen's waist and abdomen at the same time. At the same time, a one-eyed behemoth with red hair also jumped out of the cave next to Garen. The same movement, the same attack posture. The 2 behemoths are one behind the other, sandwiching Galleon in the middle. 4 blood-red claws grabbed Garen at the same time. Garen's eyebrows lit up slightly, and the 3 red dots flashed away. He raised his hand, and a huge red shadow suddenly lit up behind him. The upper body of an 8-headed dragon more than 10 meters high was revealed, and the back half seemed to be still in an unknown space, gradually fading away. Garen's eyes lit up red. Dragon roar. Roar. A circle of substantial sound waves suddenly spread out, like ripples on the water's surface. A large amount of rock debris was knocked down from both sides of the entire canyon. The violent sound waves dispersed in all directions in an instant, and the rock under Galen's feet cracked, and a large circular pit appeared, filled with dense cracks. The 8 heads of the 8-headed dragon roared at the same time, and the dragon's roar released was almost 4 times as powerful as the original. This terrifying sound wave shock swept through the 2 behemoth beasts in an instant. The facial features of the 2 one-eyed behemoths all oozed red blood. They were knocked over heavily and fell to the ground unable to move. They struggled to get up, but their muscles were numb and they couldn't use any strength at all. Their huge one-eyed eyes could not see anything, only darkness. The behemoths at both ends let out whining sounds, which were full of panic and fear. The 8-headed dragon separated 2 heads, leaned down and took 1 bite at a time, directly biting the one-eyed behemoth, and threw it upwards. There were 2 crunching sounds. The 2 behemoths were directly divided and torn apart by 8 heads in mid-air. The 8 big mouths kept making terrifying chewing sounds, bones being chewed, and rumbling swallowing sounds. In just a moment, the 2 huge one-eyed behemoths were torn apart and eaten by the 8-headed dragon. Garen touched his swollen belly and felt his teeth were a little sore. The meat of the one-eyed behemoth was very strong. When the 8-headed dragon was chewing the bones, he felt that his teeth were a little sore. The bones of the behemoth were not generally hard. The 2 giant beasts swallowed their stomachs, and only some broken flesh and blood fell down, turning into a rain of blood and hitting the entrance of the cave heavily. The shadow of the 8-headed dragon slowly dissipated. The 3 points between Garen's eyebrows also dimmed and no longer shined. It's just that the color is a bit bright red, as if it had been smeared with blood. Garen walked to the remaining flesh and bones. These were the parts that even the 8 dragons were unwilling to eat. They either tasted bad or were too hard to digest. Garen suddenly saw 4 blood-red claws among them. Each clawfoot has 4 fingers, and the claws are the nails of the fingers. Most of the red crystal-like nails were bitten to pieces, and only 2 were still intact. Garen bent down to pick them up, shaking off the blood slightly, and they looked like 2 fine crystal scimitars. Wipe Beeman's sharp claws with a handkerchief, and then pat the black crow ring. The main course has been solved. Next comes the other cluster monsters. They are all Type 2 and Type 1 monsters, so it's easy. Garen tied his sharp claws to his lower back. He was in a good mood. He gained 16 points of potential and gained another. Getting a souvenir will naturally make you feel good. Soon, a huge black crow flew from mid-air and landed directly in front of Garen. He rolled over on the back of the black crow, and with the flapping sound of its wings, the black crow leaped off the platform, spread its wings and flew towards the distance. After a while, it turned into a small black dot and gradually disappeared. A few minutes later, in one of the holes in the triangular honeycomb stone wall, a thin and ugly man slowly crawled out. He had a pale complexion and was wearing an inconspicuous black robe. The man was lying at the entrance of the cave, looking in the direction of Garen's retreat, with a solemn look on his face. He took out a light red crystal ball and tapped it a few times. Medea, I met my target in advance. There was silence in the crystal ball, and the sound of breathing could be faintly heard. How is it? A woman's voice came from inside. It's very tricky, the short man replied in a deep voice. I originally thought that I would be able to deal with the opponent easily if I brought the secret treasure, but as soon as I arrived, I encountered a duel between the target and two one-eyed behemoths. I hid aside and watched the battle. The result is that you feel ashamed. The man smiled bitterly. That was not a duel, but a killing. You and I both know the strength of the one-eyed behemoth. He killed both of them without any injuries. The Royal Alliance has never been exposed to such giant beasts and does not know their strength, but we in Mahakala, I have come into contact with it when I was young, but I still don't know how difficult it is. The one-eyed behemoth with two heads went crazy, which is equivalent to a spiritual totem master. Are you sure you read it correctly? Medea questioned. Absolutely not, the short man replied firmly. I am not sure about facing him. And it is easy for a master at this level to escape. So what do you mean? Assemble all the generals, surround and kill. A fierce light flashed in the short man's eyes. I suspect that the person pretending to be Jace is the same person who killed Anlu. On the Red Basin, the edge of the canyon is a large red plain. There are some sparsely scattered black dead trees on it. The bare trunks are ferocious and twisted, and there are strange tumors growing on the bark. Red stones of all sizes are scattered everywhere. The big ones are more than 10 meters high, while the small ones are only as tall as a person. Most of the stones have weathered holes in the middle. The airflow passed through the middle, making a strange whine. A huge black crow flew over the plain. On the back of the crow stood a man covered in black armor. He was wearing a hood, and a few strands of golden hair were faintly exposed from the edge of his high collar. The man had just killed Garen, the one-eyed behemoth. He patrolled around his mission point. Unfortunately, after he let out the dragon's roar, he found no one breathing around the entire mission point. He wandered around the surrounding plains for a long time and didn't even see a ghost of a monster. There were only messy footsteps scattered on the ground and some ungnawed bones, indicating that there had been a large group of monsters here before. The red color of the ground gave off a faint stench, much like the smell of feces. Garen guessed that it was the excrement of a cluster of monsters, the smell evaporated by exposure to sunlight. A subtle noise came from the black box on Cha-Cha's collar. I am an old man, and I am now reporting on all aspects of the mission. The old man's voice came from the box on Garen's collar. This is the fox, everything has been cleaned up. A cold girl's voice came from the box. TCH. The kitten is over a long time ago, another woman's voice sounded. The child isn't here yet, but it will be soon. There are suddenly a lot of monsters here. I don't know where they all came from. The child's voice sounded a little breathless. Garen secretly felt ashamed. The mission point between him and the child was very close, so all the monsters on his side were definitely scared to the child's side. Putting more burden on him in disguise. Judu has solved the problem, he responded. Where's the red umbrella? The old man asked doubtfully. Brother Red Umbrella, this was the voice of the kitten. Sorry, I had a nightmare that scared me to death. Hong Umbrella's voice came from the box. Everyone was speechless for a while. This guy was the most difficult task, but he had already completed it and even slept. Okay, let's all meet at the next mission point. Is that okay? The old man warned. If you forget the route, please tell me. I forgot, Mao Mao immediately responded confidently. Brother Hongson, how about I come with you? We can take care of each other together. Her voice became smaller and smaller as she spoke. The others laughed. Okay, the location is at the pumpkin farm. Everyone should know this ruins, right? The old man repeated. The location is at the pumpkin farm, and the time is half an hour later. Please be on time. I know the child was the most obedient and answered directly and honestly. The others didn't bother to reply and just turned off the box. Garen turned the black crow and flew towards the direction of the memorized map. The black crow increased its altitude and flew out of the red basin. Ahead is a vast expanse of forest as far as the eye can see. Green trees, red trees, and tall black statues pass through the forest from time to time. These statues are all carved of the same person, with the upper body of a human man and the lower body of a lion. He points forward with one hand and looks back, as if talking to the person behind him. The statues are old, some are covered with dense cracks, and some are mostly covered by moss and vines. Garen stood on the back of the black crow and looked down. Soon, a large black open space appeared in front of him. The open space seemed to be a bunch of hair that had been shaved off between the forest and the forest. It was bare. Garen looked over at first glance, and his expression suddenly changed slightly. The entire black open space is dotted with huge yellow-green pumpkins. Each pumpkin is as big as a basketball court and dozens of meters in diameter. The yellow-green shell is covered with dark holes. Garen stood on the back of the black crow and flew around a pumpkin. He found that the inside of the pumpkin was already hollow and there was nothing inside. When he took a closer look, he realized that these pumpkins were not real melons, but huge rocks that had been weathered into pieces. The rock surface is covered with yellow-green moss. Hey, Garen saw a man in black waving to him on the ground below. Brother Jadu, look here, it was a child's voice. Garen looked at him carefully and saw the child holding a huge red strawberry. The strawberries were bright red and extremely fresh, and red strawberry juice was constantly flowing out from some parts that were worn by the child's clothes, dripping down the child's clothes, turning his chest red. This exaggerated strawberry can't even be wrapped around with two hands. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 375. Garen drove the black crow to descend slowly, landing gently on the open space beside the child. He jumped off the crow's back and stood firmly on the black earth. What about the rest? The child shook his head. I just got here. Others didn't see it. It's probably still on the way. He pointed to the big strawberry in his arms. Want to eat? This tastes very good. Garen shook his head. Then I immediately saw the child skillfully reaching out to dig into the flesh of the strawberry, reaching directly into the innermost part, and pulled out a piece of red flesh the size of a palm with a clatter. This piece of pulp is extremely weird. It is like a heart, still beating and emitting bursts of heat. This is the strawberry heart, which can increase the weak resistance to toxins. The child took a bite and explained vaguely. Strawberry with a heart. Garen couldn't help but be slightly curious, where did this strawberry come from? My mission point is at the strawberry farm. There are many big strawberries everywhere there, and they produce a lot of big strawberries every year. The child simply explained, I grew up near here when I was a child. Did you grow up here? Garen didn't expect that a child would have such an experience. Yes, I grew up eating these things, the child answered honestly. The strawberries on the strawberry farm are very sweet. The child's lips were as red as blood after eating. Garen ignored him and looked around. There are huge pumpkins all around, and the wind passes through the holes in the pumpkins, making a whistling sound. Hey, Jadu, where are you? The old man's voice came from the black box. Garen straightened the black box. I'm already here, at the pumpkin farm, with the kids. You and the child. The other person suddenly paused, seeming a little weird. Are you alone? Alone with him? Yeah. What's wrong? Garen was confused and there seemed to be something wrong with the other person's tone. Stay where you are, I'll be there soon. The old man suddenly became anxious. Don't talk too much to children. Garen was a little confused and looked back at the child. He was eating the strawberry in his hand as if he was completely unaware of it. He kept taking out things from the inside of that weird strawberry, including parts that looked like livers, chunks of pulp that looked like lungs, and things that looked like tracheas. All were devoured by the children. His belly is like a bottomless pit that can hold anything. Garin suddenly felt something was wrong. The strawberries in the child's hands actually smelled faintly of blood. He looked at the strawberry intently. The appearance was no different from ordinary strawberries, but for some reason, he could feel that the strawberries themselves were emitting fear and despair similar to those of living creatures. Suddenly he found that the black box on the child seemed to be gone, and the black crow he was riding in was also gone. "Child, where is your black crow?" he couldn't help but ask. "Black crow? Are you talking about the big guy?" "I don't know. I lost sight of him in the blink of an eye," the child answered honestly. "What about your black box?" Here the child took out a black box from his arms like a magic trick. Garin was immediately relieved. The black box was still there, which meant that he was indeed not a fake. He tried talking to the child using the black box, and it was completely normal. Soon, a huge black crow flapped its wings and swooped down towards the two of them. The old man jumped off the black crow's back, a level 1 black light array lit up under his feet, and he landed on the ground with the help of his strength. As soon as he landed on the ground, he looked at Garin strangely. Then he looked at the child who was eating so much. "Kid, you are so honest this time. It's really rare." The child wipes his mouth. "Have I always been honest?" Garin was puzzled by what he heard. Perhaps he could vaguely guess from the old man's words that there might be some danger in being alone with a child. There is nothing unusual about the child himself. Seeing an old man and a young man getting together again, it was the same combination as usual. He couldn't ask more questions. Soon, the kitten and fox duo also arrived. The last one was Red Umbrella. He flew over from behind and still looked sleepy when he landed on the ground. All 6 people arrived, and the old man began to take the lead towards the pumpkin farm. The others followed. The whole farm was shrouded in a light mist, which seemed to be the mist in the forest. The scenery in the distance is not very clear. After walking inside for a while, a subtle sound of music could be heard faintly in the air. The sound was vague, as if it was coming from a very far away place. Like a little girl singing something in an unintelligible language. Jia Long was shocked in his heart. It was an ancient Chinese language. He could speak a few words like that, but he was self-taught, so he didn't know if it was correct. The music floating in the air clearly gives people a sense of purity of language. He began to carefully try to distinguish the lyrics, but it was difficult to hear what was being sung. The sound paused from time to time, and the piano accompaniment seemed to be a little confused. It seemed like a little girl who had just started to learn the piano made a mistake and tried to correct it again. The music began to repeat this section. Garin glanced at the others and found that no one responded, only the children humming along with the little girl's music from time to time. "Kid, can you please stop humming randomly? What kind of song is this? Why have you never heard it before?" Kitty said impatiently. "Am I humming along with the little sister?" the child answered honestly. "Didn't you hear?" The young lady made a mistake again. He looked like he was listening. "Here we go again," Kitty said helplessly, covering her forehead. "Ignore him, the child is sick again," the old man whispered. Garin's heart moved. Can't they all hear this sound? Observing the others one by one, I found that no one heard the sound, only he and the child heard it. He suddenly began to pay more attention to the child. The group of people continued to go deep into the farm, and soon found this time superior noble next to a huge pumpkin. These 2 people were huddled inside a big pumpkin in horror. When they saw everyone coming over, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Climb out of the pumpkin." The 2 men had unkempt hair and dirty faces. They looked like they hadn't taken a shower in an unknown amount of time. As soon as they got close, they smelled a lot of unpleasant smell. I am Baron Pareto of White Mist Town, and this is my wife Arya. Thank you for your efforts in rescuing me. We will definitely reward you greatly when we return. The man barely maintained his aristocratic demeanor and composure, but the uncontrollable shaking of his body revealed his current mood. Then let's go back as soon as possible, the Baron urged. Jutu, you are responsible for taking these two people, and we will all go back together, the old man ordered. By the way, we still have some things that need to be moved back. I don't know, the Baron said with a smile. Jutu, go and bring him all. I don't want to stay in this place at all. I don't know why, but I always feel a little uncomfortable, Mau Mau said impatiently. Garen shrugged. This group of people seemed to have completely dismissed him as an errand boy. The Baron also smiled at him. Then I'll trouble you. Garen was either crying or laughing. After all, let's follow the old rules and take action with the slowest time, Hong Umbrella said. Why? The kitten suddenly became furious. Okay, stop making trouble, you are the slowest, go and help carry the things. Anyway, you are not required to do anything, just put the totem, the old man advised. The monsters in my place are much stronger than those in Jutu. They have 2 heads and 3 types. They are almost as good as Aura. Kitty glanced at Garen unconvinced. Garen smiled back. This immediately made the kitten even more angry. Go, Hong-san said calmly, unmoved. The kitten stood there angrily, and finally obeyed. She only listens to what Hong Umbrella says. Garen then had the opportunity to see what the kitten's totem was. A red light flashed, and a huge elephant-sized red tiger appeared next to the pumpkin. The red tiger's body was covered with long red hair, and its limbs were weird white hooves. Looks nondescript. The kitten started to help pick up the things and carry them on the red tiger's back while cursing. From time to time, he glanced at Garen with hatred. This is none of my business, Garen smiled innocently. He looks like a good old guy. He stepped forward to help. Get out of here. Who wants your help? The kitten exploded again. Garen backed away angrily, and could only watch the kitten carrying boxes of things onto Red Tiger's back alone. For some reason, he felt that teasing the kitten was a very interesting thing, and it was really interesting to watch the kitten's hair explode. Is someone here? Can we still meet people here? Hong Xian suddenly said. There was a rare look of doubt on his face, and he looked in the direction of the mist to the left of the crowd. How could there be anyone here? The pumpkin farm is surrounded by dense groups of monsters, and we have just finished cleaning them up. The old man was also a little confused. Several people stopped and looked at the figure approaching quickly to the left. Soon, as the other party approached, his figure was finally revealed. It turned out to be a tall man wearing a black robe. He was covered with a black scarf and a silver mask on the upper half of his face. Only a pair of silver-gray eyes could be seen. Even the hair is covered by the hood. The man walked more than 10 meters away from the crowd and stopped. He glanced at the tall red-haired tiger. His eyes fell straight on Garen in the crowd. Garan Terry Jones. If you are willing to accept our sincerity and join us, then we can give you leniency for the 2 wrong things you did this time. Who are you? The old man stood up and said loudly. The other party did not answer, but looked directly at Garen. What does leniency mean? Garen smiled. Unknowingly, his good guy temperament changed slightly, and it seemed that his whole person had a weird and different feeling. The old man and others got closer and immediately noticed this clear change. Suddenly everyone looked at Garen with some surprise. What if I don't accept your sincerity today? Garen spoke again, the smile on his face was slightly cold. Kill 2 elemental generals in a row. If you don't accept it, then die here, the other party sneered. What a loud tone, the hot-tempered kitten couldn't bear it any longer. The huge red tiger pounced on it, and its limbs were ignited with black and red flames, pressing hard against the opponent like a hill. Her fingers ignited red flames, with a trace of afterimage, and quickly drew a diamond-shaped spell in the air. Boom! The red tiger exploded with a bang, turning into countless flames and sweeping towards the opponent. "Be careful," Hong Umbrella's expression changed, and he rushed in front of the kitten and blocked it with his right arm. Clang! A black light hit his arm hard, and it turned out to be a black bird. The black bird pierced Hong Umbrella's arm straight and came out from behind, but its direction was also blocked and had to turn into a black line and disappear into the mist. The opponent is also a spiritual totem master. Be careful, everyone. Hong Umbrella didn't even look at the injury on his hand, and the wound closed and healed automatically. When the kitten saw this scene, it was so frightened that even the totem light of the red umbrella could not block the opponent's blow. This was obviously not something that ordinary totem masters could do. If she hadn't been blocked, she would have been seriously injured. Spiritual light totem master? Haha, the other party sneered, and the figure actually stood firm in the countless flames without any damage. His eyes did not look at the others, but returned to Garen. "It seems that we really have no choice if we don't end it today," Garen let out a long sigh. At the same time, behind everyone, on the left and right, a man in a silver mask came out at the same time. They were all dressed exactly the same and had the same strange and powerful aura. "What else do you have to say?" the silver-faced man who took the lead said coldly. Everyone in the red team suddenly became nervous. They are not perverts from the Black Sky Society and have crystal deduction devices. They rely on the strongest core totem. Although most of them are at the spiritual level, even the most inferior kitten has the peak of Type 3. But looking at the opponent's posture, it is at least the level of spiritual light. The kitten's attack couldn't shake the light of the totem, which was a bit serious. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 376. Garen is even more aware that although the red team is very strong and is a team under the general administration, they are not the elemental generals of the Black Sky Society after all, and they do not have many powerful silver totems like them. Generally, the strongest point of an orthodox totem master is the core totem. Very few totem masters can cultivate a second spiritual totem. The generals of the Black Sky Society seemed to be different. They had mastered a special cultivation technology, although it caused the monsters to mutate and counterattack, causing great losses. But he also possesses a strength that far exceeds that of ordinary spiritual totem masters. Each of them has the power of at least 2 spiritual totems. One is its own core totem, and the other is the silver totem it masters. In comparison, each of them has the same level of strength as the Baker Stone Eyes that Garen had dealt with at the manor. The 4 of them were equivalent to the 4 Baker Stone Eyes at that time. This is the true strength of Black Sky Society, not the flowers in the greenhouse like Onlu. Garen narrowed his eyes slightly and noticed that the silver-faced man in the lead had an exquisite black pocket watch in his hand. "You are from the Black Sky Society," the old man suddenly recognized the other party's identity. He, the silver-faced man sneered. Unicom imprisonment. Huge auras suddenly appeared behind the 4 people, and they were all spiritual auras. 4 people actually have 10 spiritual light totems. All the auras of spiritual light suddenly connected into one, seamlessly integrated. Garen glanced around him and saw that no one in the red team wanted to leave. They all stayed where they were, staring at the 4 opponents as if they were facing a formidable enemy. "Let's go, they are coming for me." He knew that these people must have their own escape methods. Only then did Hong Umbrella look squarely at the new team leader. "Now that we have recognized you, you are a member of our team. We, Red, have never abandoned the style of our team members." The other 4 people didn't speak, they just started to prepare silently, and all kinds of strange and weird fighting tools were taken out. Kitty Cat, "Stand behind me," Red Umbrella warned. The kitten glanced at Garen with a complicated expression, then stood obediently behind Hong Umbrella. She also knew that the current situation was extremely troublesome and it was not the time to be willful. The four silver-faced men have completely arranged a strange formation, and a cylindrical white light film has been formed around them, completely surrounding everyone. The two nobles were so frightened that they fell to the ground, not even daring to breathe loudly. Accept the sanction. The totem powers of the four people are all connected together. In an instant, countless black mist gathered above everyone, forming black birds that had appeared before. These little birds gathered into black rivers, constantly circling in the sky, and with a roar, they turned into waterfalls, rushing down towards the crowd. Countless birds surrounded them from all directions and pounced on Garen and the others. The bodies of each bird are translucent and semi-solid, and they can actually overlap each other. The chirping of birds covered any sound, making people feel irritable. "My totem can't move," the old man suddenly screamed. "Mine too," the kitten exclaimed. Hong Umbrella felt as if his totem was shackled by something, unable to move at all. He hurriedly looked at the large flock of black birds getting closer and closer above his head. He had just seen the power of this kind of black birds. The light that could penetrate his totem was definitely a totem at the spiritual light level. There are so many now. Suddenly the fox gently tugged at the corner of his clothes from behind and shook his head slightly at him. "Look over there." Hong Umbrella immediately looked in the direction she was pointing. "I saw that the silver-faced people around me didn't show any signs of victory. Instead, they all stared at themselves nervously as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Is this?" He paused for a moment and immediately looked at the focus of the other person's gaze. It was actually the location of Jutu. At this time, the 3 birthmarks between the 9-headed eyebrows glowed as red as blood. The whole person looked extremely monstrous under the blood-colored light. Countless black birds actually avoided the others and pounced directly on Garen. Garen raised his right hand, the sharp scarlet fingernails shining with a strange red light. An inexplicable aura of terror emanated from him. Dragon roar. Roar. A circle of substantial sound waves spread instantly, not a one-time dragon roar, but a steady stream. 8 lizard dragons revealed their upper bodies behind Garen, and their 8 heads looked up to the sky at the same time and roared continuously. With Galen as the center and a radius of more than 10 meters, a huge circular pit suddenly sank. Countless pieces of gravel and dust were violently blown away, shooting out in all directions. A large number of black birds were dispersed again and turned into wisps of black mist. They disappeared completely before they could reach Garen. Small cracks are constantly appearing in the surrounding light film walls, and they are being repaired and healed quickly at the same time. Cracks and healing are in constant stalemate, and a difficult balance can only be maintained. The 4 silver-faced men were shaken all over, and a trace of blood oozed from the corners of their mouths, desperately maintaining the joint confinement spell formation. This spell formation is enough to combine all the totem power and light of the 10 spiritual light totems to form a powerful formation comparable to the 4th type of totem. But everyone underestimated the strength of the opponent. The opponent was not an ordinary elemental general at all, but had already reached the commander level. The violent concussion of the dragon's roar made the silver-faced man who took the lead feel a surge of souls in his heart. He brought 4 generals over, and also brought secret treasures to use in setting up the formation. He thought he was absolutely sure to deal with the opponent, but he didn't expect that something went wrong. His real age is less than 23, he was horrified. If he could reach such a height at such an age, if he had grown up. No. Since we have already made enemies, we must solve them completely this time. If we wait until he grows up. The leader of the silver-faced man felt a chill in his heart and took out a small milky white triangle from his arms. The triangle suddenly emitted bright white light, and a large stream of white light flowed from it into the silver-faced man's palm. The cracks in the magic array instantly healed at a much faster rate. At this time, the dragon's roar finally stopped. The shadow of the eight-headed dragon slowly dissipated. Garen frowned slightly, staring at the tight cylinder confinement around him. Large swaths of black fog once again condensed into black crows, rushing towards him again. In this formation, he is the only one who can freely use the totems. Hong Umbrella and the others' totems are actually imprisoned. Obviously, the power of this spell formation is not ordinary. "You are dead today," the silver-faced man leading the team chuckled, and the white light of the triangle in his hand became more intense. Maybe Garen grinned. The huge eight-headed dragon phantom appeared behind him again, and the eight dragon heads suddenly swooped down and sucked hard. A large number of blackbirds were suddenly sucked into the mouth by the big mouth, like 8 black whirlpools. In less than 10 seconds, almost all the blackbirds in the formation were swept away, and all were sucked into the belly of the eight-headed dragon. Click. With a crisp sound, the cylindrical light film suddenly cracked. The 4 silver-faced men looked panicked. "Damn it! It's Type 4. Escape." The silver-faced man leading the team immediately let go, turned around and ran away. But there were 2 silver-faced men who slowly disappeared at this time. It was obvious that they had fled long ago without knowing it, leaving only 2 illusions in place. The last silver-faced man turned around and wanted to run, but was directly stopped by a dragon head. "Don't kill me. I am, Cha." The dragon's mouth took one bite, biting the man into 2 pieces. After chewing for a few times, he swallowed it with a slurp. The huge dragon head returned behind Garen again. The eight-headed dragon is constantly looking around, searching for anything to eat. The eyes of these dragon heads seem to only see 2 kinds of things, edible and inedible. So much so that they quickly stared at the red team members around them. Garen immediately stopped this instinct. Being stared at by the 8 dragon heads, the red team was terrified. At this moment, they just breathed a sigh of relief and started to feel a little frightened. Now that he has been exposed, Garen is too lazy to pretend to be a good person like before. His face gradually calmed down and returned to its original calm expression. "Now I have to deal with these troubles. This is my private matter. You can choose to go back first, okay?" Mao Mao wanted to refute out of habit, but was glanced at by Garen's indifferent eyes. He suddenly became cold and lowered his head, not daring to say anything more. "Since you have enough strength, Judu, why didn't you show it early?" Hongsun asked in a deep voice. "In other words, do you recognize my identity as the team leader?" Garen looked at the kitten with interest. "Do you think being a team leader is so easy? Just having strength is enough." Mao Mao couldn't help but sneer. Garen didn't expect that this little guy would still be unconvinced after his strength was shown. "Then what do you think the team leader needs, other than strength?" he asked funny. The kitten thought carefully. 2 conditions must be met. "If you can do it, I will be the first to support you." "Which 2? Mao Mao said sternly. "First, you must sincerely be able to advance and retreat with the team members. Our team has lived and died together many times. Does what happened just now count as one time?" "That's right." Kitty stretched out a second finger. "Second, you must have a broad mind and not be concerned about small things." Suddenly she felt something behind her touching her butt. She looked back and saw that it was a huge dragon head with its big mouth pointed at her. The dragon head grinned at her, and there were still some minced meat and bones left in the saw-like fangs. Kitty felt a chill in her heart, and her whole body started to tremble a little. Her most feared death was to be eaten by a monster, and now a monster's big mouth was sticking out behind her. "Then do you think I meet both conditions?" Garen asked gently. "By the way, I remember that our group has death indicators every month, right?" The kitten turned pale and swallowed hard. "Satisfied?" "Very satisfied." "You are satisfied?" She nodded seriously. "I support you as the team leader. Absolutely. Whoever disobeys will be the first to be beaten. Garen clapped his hands and smiled. Look, isn't this very simple? He touched his chin. I personally feel that my mind is very broad. Right. Broad. Very broad. Kitten quickly gave a thumbs up. You are a naked threat. She wanted to cry but had no tears. Feeling the huge dragon head behind him, goosebumps spread all over his body. The others all saw that Garen had no ill intentions towards the kitten and did not say anything, but just watched the show. This incident fully revealed Judu's strength. This inhuman strength made them immediately recognize the new team leader. After all, in this troubled world, strength is the first priority and can ensure the safety of everything. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 377. The sky was bright, and a ray of sunshine on the horizon dyed the clouds into a small patch of pale gold. In an abandoned city near a pumpkin farm, black and gray buildings line up one after another, silently. The surface of the building was dark and dull, some doors and windows were smashed, and only a few remnants were left hanging on them. In the central square, the sculpture in the middle of the circular fountain is slightly tilted. The ground on the right side has sunk, and a deep crack appears. It is as if someone made a crack with a knife from a short distance and hit the fountain pool, shaking the sculpture. To the left of the fountain pool is an oval-shaped lawn, with only the base of a statue in the middle. The sculpture is missing. The grass was covered with black and green hay, lifeless and lifeless. The sides are connected with iron chains and short stone pillars to form guard rails. Next to the guard rail, a tall man in black armor was standing. He stepped on a short stone pillar and scanned the surroundings carefully. The whole city was silent, and in the distance there was a faint creaking sound of doors and windows being blown and swayed by the wind. The man pulled off his hood, revealing a handsome fair face, with silky blonde hair draped over his shoulders, and 3 vermilion birthmarks clearly visible between his eyebrows. It was Garen, who followed the silver-faced man who led the escape. He looked around, as if listening carefully for some sound. A faint golden halo shone from behind and landed at his feet, illuminating half of the withered grass. "Come out, I've seen you," Garen said loudly and calmly. The sound spread far and wide, creating real echoes in the city. "You have been running away for a day, and you have exhausted all the means you can use. I don't believe you still have that kind of short-distance positioning and teleportation." Garen retracted his feet and slowly walked around the fountain pool. Suddenly, the black mud at the bottom of the fountain pool moved slightly. Wow! With a piercing scream, the mud suddenly flew away, and a blood-red shadow shot out from it, heading straight towards Garen. Bang! The air behind Garen was slightly distorted, and it slammed the red shadow back as if it were real, and then fell back into the mud. The red shadow rolled several times in the mud, got up dizzy, and then revealed its entire appearance. Astonishingly, he was a half-length man covered in blood, with only his upper body and no lower body. There was no other part at all from the waist down, as if someone had cut him off at the waist. This blood-red halfling has blood-red skin and strong muscles. The head is like a locust, with a long face and 2 straight tentacles on the top of the head. There are hard shells on the surface of the body, as if it is wearing a layer of armor. The halfling was only half a human tall. After rolling on the ground several times, he shook his head and stood up. He actually floated directly in mid-air. There was no support for his lower body, so he just floated directly in mid-air. He raised 2 sharp claws and rushed towards Garen again. Halfway through the rush, his upper body was bitten hard by an invisible giant mouth. Crack! With a crisp sound, the halfling directly shattered into countless red chips and scattered on the ground. Soon, all the chips completely melted and turned into pools of blood that penetrated into the ground. The 15th one. Garen frowned slightly. Ever since he left the red team, he had been chasing the silver-faced man who led the team, arriving here directly from the pumpkin farm. I chased him all night. In this seemingly dead city, there are actually such blood-red half-length creatures everywhere. They are everywhere, hiding in any possible corner, and often pounce out suddenly to attack visitors. These half-length monsters are very fast. If they were replaced by totem masters who generally do not specialize in speed, it would be impossible to cope with them and they would have to fight hard. But Garen was different. His powerful five senses and terrifying accuracy of secret weapons made him invulnerable with just 2 dragon heads to defend himself. 2 invisible dragon mouths with a diameter of more than 1 meter are exactly like 2 shields, surrounding Garen for defense at any time. Moreover, this kind of half-length monster is not very powerful. At most, it is at the level of an ordinary type -1 totem. It can be used against ordinary people, but Galleons are not. Even if he stood there and let them hit him, he wouldn't know if he could break through the defense after hitting him for several hours. Suddenly, there was a familiar sound of footsteps deep in the city, hurried and tired. The sound was very weak, and I didn't know how far away it was. But Garen obviously heard it, a smile appeared on his face, and he walked directly in the direction of the sound. It seemed that the speed was very slow, but each step covered a distance of several meters, which was equivalent to the speed of an average person running at full speed. The opponent probably has no energy left, and can't even maintain the barely accelerated acceleration technique. Without the assistance of the totem, he can only run with both feet. Garen estimated that even if he let him go, he would not be able to survive for long in this dangerous city. This city was not the only one with the same type of monsters. They hadn't chased him very far, and the footsteps in front of him became clearer and clearer. Far ahead, a small black dot had just entered an abandoned library building. The library is in the shape of a mountain, with 3 spears on the top. In front of the door are 2 black and gray statues with human figures and bat wings. Garen quickly chased after him, his footsteps echoing in the empty city, as if there were many people running together. Mars. Like the roar of a big man, a dull and huge roar came from the library. Even the ground shook violently, and some small stones were actually vibrated by the sound. The sound seemed to be a language, but also seemed to be a meaningless roar. Bang! With the sound of glass crashing, a figure shot out from the library, flew backwards and drew a parabola, and fell heavily on a sculpture in front of the library. After a muffled sound, it rolled down from the sculpture and fell on its back. Lying on the ground. It was the silver-faced man in black who ran into the library just now. He was panting heavily, lying on the ground and trying to straighten up, but his waist seemed to be twisted and he couldn't get up at all. Boom! Bang bang! There were heavy footsteps in the library, and it seemed like there was some huge monster walking back and forth. Soon, the footsteps disappeared and everything returned to silence. Garen glanced at the library from a distance. He didn't know what kind of monster was hidden there. Looks very powerful. But his first goal is to catch the silver-masked man. With a step of his foot, a black afterimage emerged from his entire body, spanning hundreds of meters in an instant, and stood directly in front of the silver-masked man. The other party also saw the sudden appearance of a figure. The shadow covered his head and appeared from behind. He suddenly froze. "You finally came after me under the mask," his voice sounded extremely bitter. "According to the noble decree, I have the right to pay for my actions in exchange for my life and freedom. I hope that your excellency, who is also a noble, will allow me to redeem myself." "What's in there?" Garen did not answer, but looked towards the library with interest. The other party was taken aback by his jumping ability, and then he reacted. "I don't know," he smiled bitterly. "I just came here last week, and this monster didn't even exist at that time, and now it suddenly appeared. It was like it suddenly jumped out of the cracks in the rocks. Obviously we have surveyed the surrounding area, and there is no such giant monster within hundreds of kilometers." "Monster?" You don't know, Garen was slightly startled, didn't you create these monsters? That's right, the silver-faced man shook his head, but after the people in Mahakala discovered the black copper mine, everything seemed to be out of control. I dare to swear that I was involved in the big black copper mine in Mahakala. Some of the monster experiments have never seen a monster in such a form. Never. Garen suddenly recalled the existence of urban trolls. If the urban trolls were also created by the Black Sky Society's monster experiments, no one would believe that the key Black Sky Society could create such powerful monsters and could unify the world long ago. You just said black copper ore? What is that? He asked again. This was something he had never heard of. The silver-faced man secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If you promise not to kill me, I will tell you everything I know. Okay, Garen nodded in agreement. I still need you to help me contact other members of the Black Sky Club, so why am I willing to kill you? The silver-faced man was stunned for a moment. Looking at Garen's natural expression, he was speechless for a moment. I regret it extremely now. If I had known that this matter was so difficult, I would never have acted without permission. Tell me, what is black copper ore? Garen asked calmly. The silver-faced man managed to get up from the ground, leaned his back on the sculpture base, and took a breath. Black copper mine can be said to be the source of mutation of all monsters. I was a senior workshop master who first conducted experiments in Mahakala, so I know these secrets very well. He took out a small bottle of red liquid from his arms. Do you mind if I take some medicine? Of course, Garen nodded. Your health is in very bad shape. Even if you can still run, I can catch you again. The silver-faced man smiled bitterly. Initially, we found an abandoned altar underground in a ruins. The altar was entirely made of a metal that was neither gold nor silver. The whole body was pitch black, but it was not the iron we are familiar with. Copper. A prospector of Mahakala was the first to discover the altar, and then after discovering this brand new metal, the entire Mahakala became interested. We sent a large number of researchers into the altar to study this strange metal. The altar itself has no function. It has been aged for a long time and has been completely abandoned. But after cutting and studying the metal used to make the altar, scholars made an astonishing discovery. What discovery? Garen was also aroused by him. They discovered that the properties of this metal are very similar to copper, so they simply named it black copper. Not only the altar, but also there is an amazing black copper mine under the altar. The silver-faced man smiled bitterly again. This black copper metal actually carries an amazing activity. Active. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 378. Yes, just a little bit of this metal can corrode all parts and organs of any living thing. They will produce a special secreted substance that fills the living body, giving it terrifying properties that can resist the light of the totem. Just like turning water into ice that is comparable to steel. You can imagine how excited the experts and scholars are about this weird and powerful ability to change. This is a discovery that spans the ages. The silver-faced man shook his head. So the crystal deducer came into being. We used the already mature resonance technology and combined with this black copper that corrodes living things to create the now well-known crystal deducer. But during the final experimental stage, an accident occurred. Garen looked at him quietly, waiting for the next step. The accident was discovered by a humble ordinary scholar. He discovered an astonishing fact about black copper. This weird metal is actually causing the eroded monsters to evolve on their own. After he observed and confirmed, the black copper seemed to have his consciousness was average, and he seemed to know that he had been discovered, so he suddenly increased his evolution speed. By the time the scholar raised the alarm, other combat-ready totem masters arrived, and it was already too late. The monsters that had successfully evolved had a powerful power that exceeded the control of the base. They massacred 25 base strongholds of Mahakala. A large number of monsters escaped from the base, and we were unable to control them at all. So, the release of mutated monsters this time was not deliberately released in order to return the world to the correct concept as you claimed. But it was a fundamental accident from beginning to end, Garen asked in a deep voice. It's just what you think, the silver-faced man replied weakly. So, the situation is now completely out of our control. Powerful monsters that have never been seen before suddenly appear in many areas, and some strange phenomena that have never been seen before appear. We don't know what is going on. All existing scholars are, after diligent research, they finally came to an astonishing conclusion. The activity contained in black copper seemed to be rapidly changing the natural circulation system of the entire world. They proposed an astonishing proportion formula. Buffeto's formula. Every time a black copper is produced, polluted organisms will release an influence that is enough to mutate 5 identical organisms. This is an evolutionary formula obtained through everyone's calculation and modeling. There is a very complicated process in the middle, but the result is this. But we knew this, but we still couldn't help but continue to create our own power, so that the pollution and corrosion of black copper became more and more serious. Until the high-level evolutionary totem appeared, the same high-level totem actually appeared in the world. Naturally mutated creatures, when we discovered them, these naturally mutated creatures evolved faster than us, and the situation was completely out of control. Some monsters have evolved to a point that we cannot deduce. Then are there some invisible but extremely powerful monsters? Garen asked again. Indeed, this phenomenon only appeared shortly after the situation was out of control. Scholars of Mahakala discovered that the new natural circulation system established by black copper in a short period of time seemed to have become confusing in many places, and it appeared in many places it is an incomprehensible natural phenomenon, just like the sound of music on a pumpkin farm. The silver-faced man is still very good in professional knowledge, and the clarity of his explanations is comparable to that of Leyland. So where can I find this kind of black copper? Garen suddenly became interested in the metal from this source. A small amount of black copper is incorporated into the crystal deduction device. However, if you want to get the sample metal from the source, you must go to Mahakala. This metal is strictly controlled by them, although every time a monster is created, it may cause natural mutations of 5, but this is like a poisonous dove flower. As long as there is a first time, there will be a second and third time, and then we will be trapped in it and unable to extricate ourselves. In order to fight against the extremely powerful Royal Alliance, we have no choice. The Royal Family, the Alliance's Council of Elders, governs the 3 major agencies. It is a long-standing organization that has not changed for thousands of years. If those perverted monsters hadn't restrained the Council of Elders and most of the attention of the 3 major agencies were on monsters, we wouldn't have had so much time to calm down. Lay out and develop your own strength. Garen heard a new word again. What kind of organization is the Council of Elders? He had never seen this organization appear in the original history. It is the highest decision-making organization of the Royal Alliance and the most powerful group of existences among all the royal families of the Alliance. They are a huge shadow that has shrouded the eastern and western continents for thousands of years. No matter what changes, they are inseparable from their behind-the-scenes promotion. The royal family, in fact, the 3 major agencies were originally loose organizations. Without the unification of the Council of Elders, it would have been impossible to form an organization like the 3 major agencies. Countries have long been working on their own and conquering each other. The silver-faced man looked at Garen in surprise. I guess it is because you have joined the 3 major agencies for too short a time. Those with higher levels and longer qualifications will have the opportunity to participate in the agency arbitration conference every 20 years to balance and correct the behaviors and mistakes of various countries. Prevent Royal Alliance's internal wasted strength. Then why have I never seen anyone from the Council of Elders you mentioned? Is it possible that so many strong men have disappeared? Garen asked in surprise. Why are they missing from so many major events? They are all underground. The most powerful monsters are lurking underground, and they are still evolving. The Xenongfa defense line they created is an extension of the underground defense line on the surface. Otherwise, you think so many totem masters and manpower can resist it? Invasion of monsters? Back then, our Black Sky Society had even killed one of the most powerful elemental generals. Once those monsters rushed into the underground of human cities, the consequences would be disastrous. If our Black Sky Society were not hidden enough, these monsters have long since found and killed them. Garen finally got a rough idea of the situation. Originally, he was wondering why the Royal Alliance didn't seem to be very strong, but the Black Sky Society didn't dare to take action head-on, and only dared to do dirty tricks secretly. It turned out that there was also an Elders' Council on top. Hold on. Come with me, let's go in and take a look. Garen pondered for a moment, then looked up at the huge library building in front. The silver-faced man smiled bitterly but remained silent. He knew this was an order rather than a question. He was feeling a little better after just drinking the recovery potion. He managed to stand up, and the white totem light on his body became bright again. Apparently the restorative potion also had an effect on the totem light. Garen took the lead towards the library door. From the outside, we can see that all the slender vertical strip windows of the library are broken in rows. Only some broken glass fragments remain on the windows. Only one of the doors is hanging at the door, and the other half is covered by something unknown. Most of the thing was chewed away, revealing a rough black metal section inside. Walking into the door, the light golden light beam in the early morning was projected from the left window and fell on the ground. You could faintly see the dust floating in the air. There were broken and crooked benches everywhere on the ground, the black marble floor was full of cracks and gravel, and there were several large pits, more than 1 meter deep, filled with honeycomb stone that had melted and solidified like magma. In the middle of the hall stands a large silver ball, more than 2 meters in diameter, supported by a thick white stone pillar below. The entire surface of the sphere is densely covered with writings of various colors, which seem to be messages from previous visitors. Garen carefully avoided the deep pit and walked towards the big ball directly in front. Gently stroking the various handwriting on the ball, it was written in an incomprehensible language, which seemed to be the unique language of this small country. Garen searched for a while, but found no message that he could recognize. After looking at it for a while, he gave up. He took back his hand, but was shocked to find that his fingers were covered with a thin layer of black ash. The black ash seemed to be corrosive, causing Garen's fingers to ache slightly. He is now turning on the light of the totem, but toxic substances can actually come into contact with his skin without his permission? You must know that the light of the totem is connected to the consciousness. When substances that may harm the body appear in the outside world, it will actively filter out such harmful substances. The same principle is applied to the enemy. Once an enemy appears that is hostile to oneself, the totem light will have the proper defensive effect. This is equivalent to a layer of skin on the outside. It first senses whether external substances can harm the body. It is directly connected to consciousness, and the body also has a certain independent judgment system. When the workshop masters and Silver Lantern masters first made the totem, they took the lead in designing a working operation core. This is one of the most basic components of the original totem. Once it becomes a core totem, this core component ability will be enabled. But now there is actually a substance that can break through this layer of selective defense and hurt Garen's skin. This made Garen somewhat incomprehensible. Although he didn't learn much from teacher Aining, he was still an orthodox Silver Lantern master, and some basic principles were very clear. He fell into thought slightly. Bang! Suddenly a dull sound came from the right side. Garen glanced sideways and was slightly startled. He saw a strong black horse staring at him with blood-red eyes. The black horse's mane is like a lion's, constantly swaying randomly, and its body is extremely black, without a trace of color. From head to toe, you can faintly see the bright black reflective luster. The most bizarre thing is that the back half of the black horse is not a flesh and blood body, but a huge black carriage. Its rear body is connected to the black carriage. It does not have two hind legs and is directly replaced by two huge black wheels on the carriage. Laugh. The black horse blew out a stream of air from its nostrils and blew it to the ground, blowing away large amounts of gravel and dust. When Garen saw the black carriage, he was stunned for the first time. Is this? His mind suddenly recalled a name he had seen before. It's here again, the silver-faced man behind him suddenly screamed and hid behind Garen, looking extremely frightened. Is he very powerful? Garen asked in a deep voice. It's so powerful, it's just abnormal, the silver-faced man said loudly, I can't hit it at all. It can only hit me. Thinking of the situation just now, he felt aggrieved. This dark horse is not very fast. But it can move instantaneously and can pass through any physical object. However, if it really hits an enemy, it will cause substantial impact damage. It's so weird. I didn't expect such a thing to exist. Garen was not surprised. I should have thought of it a long time ago, since there is even that. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 379. Garen was not surprised at all. Even urban trolls have appeared, so it is not unexpected that mythical creatures appear again. It's just that the mythical and legendary creatures that once appeared in the secret martial arts world actually appear alive in the totem world. This is what makes him feel weird. Looking at the black carriage in front of him. Its name clearly appeared in Garen's mind. The underworld carriage. He narrowed his eyes slightly. In the legend of Guyenduo, the carriage that can bring the living into the world of the dead has a ferocious temperament and eats 2 tons of meat and 15 sinful souls every day. He began to slowly circle around the underworld carriage. The black horse also followed him and changed direction, its huge eyes becoming more and more blood red. Laugh. 2 more puffs of white gas spurted out from its nostrils. Mars. A roar like a human voice came from the black horse's mouth. The huge sound shook the surroundings, and a large amount of lime and debris fell from the ceiling, like a layer of dust rain. The underworld carriage rushed forward violently, its hooves dragging its wheels and slamming into Garen. A thick yellow mist emanated from the carriage, as if it were alive, and instantly appeared next to Garen, shrouding him tightly in it. The speed of the black horse suddenly increased, turning into a black line almost instantly and slamming into Garen. Garen's eyes widened and he had no time to react. He only felt a huge force hitting the front of his body. He felt as if his hands and feet were bound by some strange force, becoming extremely slow. And the opponent's speed suddenly became terrifying and abnormal. Boom! The black carriage hit Garen hard in front of his body. The black horse rushed back with the person, floated into the air, and smashed into the wall of the library behind with a bang. The wall instantly lit up with a layer of transparent ripples, blocking 1 person and 1 horse. Unlike the windows, the wall seemed to be covered with an inexplicable force field defense that did not allow any attack to damage the library building itself. Garen and the black horse hit the wall together, shaking up a large amount of dust and stone debris, as if they were smashed into the gray-white sea water. The dust and stone sand splashed out from the wall like water splashes, spreading everywhere. Yes, it's like rain. For a while, huge crashes echoed in the library. Mars. The carriage in the underworld roared again, completely penetrated Garen's body, and submerged into the wall. It seemed that it suddenly changed from a solid body to a virtual body, quickly turned into a transparent form, and gradually disappeared. Garen's whole body was stuck in the middle of the deep pit on the wall in a large shape. He shook his head and broke free from the top, bringing out a piece of gravel and sand. With the sound of rustling sand, Garen spat out the dust and sand in his mouth. A black light array lit up under his feet, and he jumped down from mid-air. Sure enough, it's a bit weird. Garen landed firmly on the ground with a snap. Transparent defense ripples were constantly rippling all over his body, which was the giant mouth of the lizard dragon that was used to resist just now. But the strength is not that great, he commented lightly. At this time, the silver-faced man was hiding behind the big silver ball. Seeing Garen being hit, he could still comment on the power of the black carriage as if nothing had happened, and he was even more horrified. He was hit just now and was seriously injured. Just as the light of the totems in his body recovered a little, it was completely scrapped. The damage to his core totems worsened, and the silver totem was hit hard for the second time in a row. The impact on Garen was stronger than him. He was only hit by the dark horse, while Garen was directly hit against the wall and held up, but nothing happened. Hiss. The underworld carriage once again passed through the wall opposite Galen, as if rushing out of the water, quickly materializing from illusory translucence to becoming a solid entity. It seemed to know that the opponent in front of it was difficult to deal with, and it began to circle around Galen cautiously. The wheels of the black carriage rolled gurglingly on the ground, mixed with the crisp sound of horse hooves, which seemed particularly clear. Once again, a large amount of yellow smoke overflowed from the underworld carriage. The yellow mist had just left the carriage less than 1 meter before it teleported and appeared next to Garen. They seemed to be alive, covering the totem light around Garen. Here we go again, Garen knew clearly. This smoke seems to be taking away my speed and attaching it to the underworld carriage. He carefully felt the changes in his body, and his limbs seemed to be getting heavier and heavier. The response is getting slower and slower. The dark horse on the opposite side is becoming more and more agile and fast. That's true. Extracting the opponent's speed to myself, no wonder its speed is so much faster than before. It turns out that this is my own speed state. Garen's heart sank slightly. This move was tricky, and he knew how fast he was. Now with an agility of over 6 points, even many speed totems are not as fast as his own speed. At this time, he was extracted by the underworld carriage, increasing and decreasing, and the speed ratio between the two sides suddenly became extremely huge. In mythology, the chariot of the underworld was knocked unconscious by the strongman Borhage, but Borhagrid had the Chaos Warhammer given by the warlock Mother Earth, and he was extremely powerful, but his movements were slow. This would not happen no matter how fast he is drawn by the underworld carriage, his speed is slow enough anyway. It doesn't matter whether he draws it or not. Galen recalled the story in the myth. I don't know whether the story in the myth is true or false. The so-called Borhage is in history. We are just deified humans who like to brag about their own legendary stories. I don't know if this happened to me. A series of thoughts suddenly flashed through Garen's mind. But no one can think of a way to deal with the underworld carriage. The stupidest way is to fight back before it hits me. Garen increased his vigilance and stared at the underworld carriage on the opposite side. Maybe after I get this thing done this time, I can take it to the legendary underworld. This is a mysterious carriage that can take the living to the underworld. Garen has also longed for the legendary underworld in Gaian Duo. Mars. The underworld carriage finally couldn't bear it anymore, lowered its head, and rushed towards Garen fiercely. The yellow mist lingered around the body, and the speed was astonishingly fast. In the hall, the carriage suddenly drew a yellow line and hit Garen hard on the spot. One yellow and one black made a fierce collision sound, and a large amount of yellow mist splashed everywhere again. Boom. Hiss. Garen's feet gripped the ground tightly, leaving 2 long black scratches on the ground, and his back hit the wall again. From a very close distance, with the horse's head pressed against his arms, he could clearly see that the black mane behind the horse's head was shaking and spreading out like waves. The satin-smooth skin is extremely shiny, and the strong muscle outlines drive the big muscles to undulate violently. It's now. The 3 dots of red between Garen's eyebrows suddenly lit up, and a huge red eight-headed dragon slowly appeared behind him. Roar! The eight heads of the eight-headed dragon looked up to the sky and roared at the same time. The terrifying sound waves exploded. With a bang, the air seemed to explode, sending out a circle of white gas in all directions. Countless buzzing sounds echoed throughout the library. The big silver ball rolled to the ground with a huge roar, almost hitting the silver-faced man. Most of the stone carvings on the walls have fallen into loose fragments. The silver-faced man's own totem light was already much weaker, but now he was so shocked that he almost couldn't breathe. His chest was extremely depressed and uncomfortable, and he wanted to vomit but couldn't. He didn't dare to stay any longer, so he stumbled along the corner and ran out of the library hall, and threw himself at the door. His eyes were filled with stars, he was so dizzy that he couldn't see anything. The strange thing is that as soon as I left the library, the noise behind me became much quieter. After a few seconds, he finally calmed down and the silver-faced man breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at his miserable appearance, he suddenly started crying and gave himself a hard slap on the thigh. "Can you stop being so perverted?" He felt tears coming out of his eyes, and he wanted to dive into the cracks in the ground. "I am an elemental general, I can't cry. Can't cry." He wiped away his tears fiercely. "They'll never meet such a pervert. I won't do it anymore. Whoever loves him will come." He jumped up, slammed the badge on his chest, turned around and wanted to leave. Boom! Suddenly there was another roar behind him. The silver-faced man suddenly stiffened, and then remembered the current situation. Now he was no longer free, but became a prisoner of Garen. Sure enough, civil servants should do civilian work. "I must be a bitch to think of becoming a general," he muttered to himself, sat down at the door, took out a stick from his pocket with trembling hands and smashed it. The flattened brown cigarette flicked on the ground, and the cigarette butt immediately lit up, and he took a nice puff. "There are 2 more perverts under 23 in Mahakala and 3 in the Royal Alliance." He raised his head and looked at the bright sunshine in the sky. "The whole world is full of perverts. In this perverted world, ordinary people like me should just work as civilians." After swearing a lot, he seemed to feel much better. Just sit there and wait for the results in the library. It's not that he didn't want to run away, but the other party seemed to be able to find him at any time no matter where he ran. He had experienced this too many times yesterday and he was tired. After all, they are not full-time combat personnel. Garen's eyes were faintly flashing red, and he stared intently at the underworld carriage opposite. The extremely powerful sound waves of the dragon's roar had no effect on the opponent. The underworld carriage only retreated a little distance, and all the sound waves were blocked by the yellow mist surrounding it. Garen sensed the 8-headed dragon, and the 8 heads took turns to block. For the 8-headed dragon with amazing recovery power, it was nothing at all. 1 person and 1 horse stood facing each other across the big silver ball, and the situation seemed to have entered a stalemate. Garen was also at a loss, and the other party had nothing to do against him. The speed was extracted, and the gap suddenly widened to the point where he could not hit him at all. The 8-headed dragon's attacks had no effect on it, including the direct bite from the dragon's mouth, which were completely blocked by Huang Mist. And the carriage of the underworld hit galleons again and again, rushing out from the walls, the ground, and the ceiling at various weird angles, hitting it again and again, but it had no effect. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 380. Garen's hood wasn't even blown open by the shock. He was just knocked around and was not injured. After some entanglement, both sides seemed to be aware of the other's difficulty, and the situation became deadlocked. Time passes minute by minute. I don't know how long it took. The sunlight gradually dimmed, and the sky gradually became dark. The underworld carriage finally hissed, slowly backed up, and disappeared directly into a small patch of shadow behind it. Mars. Its blood-red eyes stared intently at Garen, seeming to remember the guy who had rendered it powerless the first time. Soon, its body and the car entered the shadow together. Suddenly, it turned around, accelerated and ran, and jumped up in the shadow. Silently, the underworld carriage sank directly into the wall and disappeared completely. Masmus's cry came faintly from the distance and still echoed in the library. But it quickly moved away, getting smaller and smaller, until it completely disappeared. Garen stood there quietly, feeling a little helpless. He even tried to press the secret weapon at the bottom of the box. Unfortunately, the speed at which he was extracted was too high, almost reaching 80%. This also caused his reaction to keep up, but his movements and body could not keep up at all. This is actually nothing. As long as the ability to predict is still there is no problem. The most important thing is that the carriage in the underworld moved too fast, almost like yellow lightning, and it had already hit him before he blinked his eyes. Moreover, the carriage in the underworld is completely immune to totem attacks, and its own body attacks cannot keep up. It is completely immune to totem attacks, making it impossible to fight. Garen was also furious. Looking at the empty library hall, Garen calmed down and turned around to go out to see if the silver-faced man was still there. Suddenly, his steps stopped and he froze in place. The entire hall suddenly experienced strange changes. The gravel on the ground floated up piece by piece, flew towards the ceiling, and was embedded back into the original cracks and grooves. The big silver ball that rolled down automatically moved and flew back to its original place lightly, as if a video recorder was rewinding. Even the trajectory it rolled back was exactly the same. A large amount of dust and gravel flew back to the statue on the wall, and fit back together. Countless amounts of dust floated up, rising silently. It was as if the world was turned upside down and a heavy rain of dust and gravel began to fall from the ground. The smashed and shattered tables and chairs automatically flipped up and rolled back to their original positions. A large number of sawdust flew back from the surface, and the fit was complete, and then countless dust covered them back, getting thicker and thicker. The large pits on the ground were quickly refilled, and then the cracks disappeared and were covered with the original black marble, with a thick layer of dust on the outside. The entire library seemed to be going back in time silently, and all the damaged areas were quickly restored to their original state. Finally, everything returned to calm. The library has been completely restored to the moment Garen came in and saw it. There were no traces of the movement of the underworld carriage. He looked at the entire library hall with a strange expression, and his mind was confused for a moment. What's going on? Garen walked to the bottom of a large hole in the wall that had been created when he was hit earlier, and looked up at the place where the big hole was. It was intact, and you could even see a small spider web in the corner of the wall, with the spider's translucent shell on it. The position was not high, so Garen stretched out his fingers and pressed the wall. It was flat and smooth, and the surface was still covered with a layer of white ash, but the previous black ash was gone. He pressed hard without believing in evil. Click. Suddenly there was a dent in the wall. Then it quickly returned to flatness. Garen retracted his fingers and looked at the surrounding scene with a thoughtful expression on his face. He turned around and walked towards the door. After exiting the door, he saw the silver-faced man sitting on the steps at the door. This guy actually fell asleep. He probably relaxed all of a sudden and simply broke the jar. Whatever happened? He also began to snore. The guy's black clothes became dirty, dusty, and somewhat tattered. There was a black badge scattered on the ground beside it. The carving on it was a bit strange. It was a silver sun emitting infinite light. Inside the sun, there was an eye with a black vertical pupil. Garen put the badge away. He walked over and kicked the silver-faced man. Wake up. Hello. The silver-faced man stumbled and suddenly woke up. Stand up suddenly. Is it over? He quickly turned back to look at Garen. What do you mean it's over? Garen was speechless. Next, I need your help. Take me to the Black Sky Society's strongholds, all the strongholds you know. He was about to start brushing up on action points, his agility was still a little short of perfect, and his secret weapon also needed points to be increased. Stronghold, I know where the other two runaway guys should be, the silver-faced man replied immediately, his response was decisive and without hesitation. Garen couldn't help but take another look at him. Take off your mask. The silver-faced man smiled bitterly and took off the mask on his face. He revealed a weathered face of a middle-aged uncle, a very ordinary face, with a black beard mixed with a few white beards. His eye sockets were sunken, looking like he was severely sleep-deprived. What's your name? Garen asked casually. Feng Qi, my name is Feng Qi, the uncle answered honestly. Wind chimes, Garen almost vomited. Looking at that very weathered face, he didn't know where to complain. This name doesn't match this face at all. Okay, wind chimes, he reluctantly got used to the contrast. Take out all the secret treasures you used to besiege me yesterday. Wind chime honestly took out something, a black exquisite pocket watch, and handed it to Garen. Garen took it, held it in his hand and started playing with it. The pocket watch is very small, only half the size of a normal pocket watch. There are no numbers, no words, no scales on it, only a pointer that is constantly rotating. What's this? Atomized black crow array, Feng Chime explained, we call it the mist crow array. It can catalyze tens of thousands of aura-shaped black crow totems and form a cylindrical magic array to isolate and imprison the enemy. Imprisonment ability, it consumes a lot of money. You smashed it yesterday, and the structure of this part of the secret treasure is also broken. Now only the function of catalyzing the black crow is left. What level of secret treasure is this? The imitation of the second level secret treasure, Feng Chime explained, it is the imitation of the ultimate secret treasure you call it. Internally in Mahakala, we divide the secret treasures into 1 to 3 levels according to the general, ultimate, and initial. Correspondingly, it is convenient to divide the power. It was originally a third-level secret treasure. The Mist Crow formation is an imitation of the Mahakala defense formation and belongs to the second-level secret treasure. There are many second-level secret treasures, and almost all leaders of major forces have them. This is also what I made after my contribution to Mahakala. The rewards you get. Garen's eyes flashed. So, the Mahakala Society also has the third-level initial secret treasure. Yes, this is a secret treasure that can be used repeatedly. Its maximum power is the fourth type of totem level. Wind Chime stared at the pocket watch with some pain. He's yours now. Garen smiled, turned over the pocket watch, and saw a line of small silver characters engraved on the dark back. If giving up is a kind of sobriety, then I still choose to persist is in Enite script. That line of writing was carved by the maker. He was my best friend and the top workshop master and scholar of Mahakala. He has been dead for many years. The wind chime became a little lower. How do you use this? Garen threw away his pocket watch. Imagine the power of your own totem pouring into it. Every time you use it, you will consume a piece of amethyst. As a reminder, the power of the totem required is very large. Of course, you can also use the light of the totem to make up for it. The two are actually similar in nature, the wind chime quickly reminded. Oh. Garen held the pocket watch in his hand and tried to input his totem power and totem light into it. The power of the secret treasure is determined by the amount of totem power or totem light you input. The upper limit is 4 types. The range can be very wide, Feng Chime explained while retreating further. It is convenient for Galen to experiment with the secret treasure. The created fog crow only has the consciousness of attacking and nothing else. It needs to be used with caution. The words have not yet finished. Black mist quickly filled the area around Galleon. Large waves of black mist spread from around him, and the source of the mist was clearly the pocket watch in his hand. The mist swirled and condensed above Galen's head, and soon formed small black crows. Some stopped on Garen's shoulders, some circled and flew overhead, and some looked around for targets to attack with their small eyes. A large amount of black fog condensed into more and more fog crows. Gradually, the entire entrance of the library was shrouded in a large black fog. Feng Chime opened her mouth wide and was speechless for a moment. This kind of momentum was surprisingly similar to the momentum they created last night. Large black fog crows began to circle in the sky around the library, like black rivers, converging and then dispersing. The sky was filled with strange quacking screams. It was as if the dead city suddenly became lively. "How much totem light does he have?" Feng Chime murmured, not knowing what expression to use at this time. Soon, the scene lasted for more than half a minute, and a large number of fog crows turned into black mist again and swarmed back into the pocket watch in Garen's hand. The black mist dissipated, revealing Garen's calm and composed face. "This thing is good, the power is indeed very good, and the consumption is not very high." Garen was very satisfied with this secret treasure. The eight-headed dragon is his strongest totem, but the other totems are completely incomparable and too weak. He plans to remove the control over time and exchange them for other resources to avoid wasting them. The eight-headed dragon is too powerful, and it is easy for others to discover the difference in his totem if he takes it out at every turn. The acquisition of the mist crow formation just made up for the shortcomings in daily use. The power of the aura transformed into the strongest four types fully meets the needs of normal use, and the stronger eight-headed dragon does not need to always be in the spotlight. Now the eight-headed dragon is released in a completely illusory form, as if even the body has been transformed into elements. For a short time, it can be pretended to be possessed by spiritual light. After a long time, even a totem master will know that something is abnormal. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 381. Somewhere in the forest on the border between Ennet and Kuwaitan. The sky in the afternoon was dark yellow at the edge and black in the middle. It was covered with clouds, and large black clouds were rolling and flowing. The strong wind blew by in waves, causing the sea of trees to rustle. In the forest, a square garden stands quietly in the middle. The garden is only a few dozen meters long and wide, small and quiet, with no one inside. The interior of the garden is filled with rows of black tombstones, and in the middle stands a black spire, shaped like the tip of a pencil. The minaret is dark, with dense reliefs of figures on the surface, and is surrounded by metal guard rails. On the right side of the tower, on the green grass, Galen and Feng Chime were standing by the tower, looking up at the spire. Both of them were dressed in black, but Garen's clothes were obviously much cleaner and neater. The wind chime was in tatters and looked a little embarrassed. Garen walked in through the broken fence on one side, stretched out his hand and lightly touched the surface of the spire. It was cold, somewhat like wood to the touch, and there were some hard and crisp shells stuck to it. A large piece fell off when touched, revealing a fat, light yellow flesh worm underneath. "It looks very shabby. Are you sure this is where it is?" Garen looked back at the wind chime. "Okay," Feng Chime nodded heavily. "This is one of the strongholds I know. They don't know that I was captured by you, so they shouldn't be transferred." "Is it under this tower?" Garen asked again. "Right here." Garen narrowed his eyes slightly. "Back off." The wind chime shuddered slightly and quickly backed away. After walking less than 10 meters, he saw a large black mist suddenly filling the place where Garen was standing. The black mist turned into fog crows, spiraling straight into the air, making countless harsh squawking sounds. Hundreds of fog crows gathered into a group and crashed down from above. Like a black hammer. Bang! There was a dull crashing sound, and the ground on the right side of the minaret suddenly sunk completely. Everything within a radius of more than 10 meters was smashed several meters deep. A huge crater with a diameter of more than 10 meters appeared next to the minaret. "Walk." A sharp male-female voice came from the ground, and 4 figures broke through the soil on the ground, shooting out in all directions like arrows. Garen snorted coldly, and hundreds of fog crows turned into a black stream, quickly surrounding the 4 people. A huge group of elements was drawn on the spot with him as the center. The fog crow's speed was astonishing, with almost an afterimage, and it completely forced the 4 black figures back in an instant. These 4 figures were all wearing black robes. The figure leading the figure could not distinguish between male and female, but he looked thin. "Who are you?" Sensing the powerful force field fluctuations around him, the man in black robes in the lead asked sharply, staring at Garen closely. "Do you know where this place is?" "This is one of the branches of the Black Sky Society." "How dare you attack our branch? Do you want to die?" "The one I'm looking for is your Black Sky Society," Garen sneered and waved his right hand. Amidst the strange screams, a large torrent of fog crows rushed over and directly drowned the 4 people. There are only 4 people, one of whom is a Type 3 Major General, and the other 2 are only at the school level, too weak. The 4 of them had just summoned the totems. A giant black elephant, 2 giant dark yellow birds, and perhaps other totems were completely submerged by the torrent of fog crows before they were all released. He couldn't even scream. It took more than 10 seconds after the torrent of mist crows washed away. The situation of the 4 people was revealed again. The 4 men in black robes had completely turned into 4 skeletons. All the flesh and blood seemed to have been corroded by something, leaving only white and clean bones. There was a crunching sound, and the 4 skeletons collapsed to the ground at the same time. Their totems were also drowned instantly in the torrent of mist crows. Only the giant elephant let out a long roar, and then turned into a huge elephant skeleton and collapsed. Garen raised the pocket watch in his hand, put all the black mist crows back into the pocket watch, and looked at the people and totems on the ground. Then he looked at the increased potential points in his attribute column, and he immediately showed a look of satisfaction. "Let's go to the next stronghold." He took the lead towards the outskirts of the woodland. Feng Chime showed a wry smile and followed closely, and the 2 figures quickly disappeared into the nearby woods. In the pale yellow trees. The black mist is like a snake, constantly searching in the forest, changing into the form of a crow from time to time, and then turning into black mist again. Faintly visible. A red bird with a fleshy head had just flown down and landed on a tree branch when it was swept by the black mist. The feathers of the red bird quickly fell off and turned into black ash, revealing the red muscles and skin underneath. Soon, the skin and flesh shriveled up quickly. In less than a few seconds, only the skeleton of a small bird was left, which snapped from the tree branch. It fell down with a clack. The wind chime below had a wry smile on its face. Boom! Not far ahead, there was a violent shaking sound, and large tracts of woods were cut down, falling one by one. There was a swishing sound between leaves and leaves. A white light shot out and turned into a silver halo above the woods. The light wheel shrank instantly and was about to disappear. Laugh! A black spike shot up into the sky from below and hit the silver light wheel hard. Immediately afterwards, there is the second way, the third way, and the fourth way. Densely packed black spikes rushed out, accurately stabbing the silver light wheel in mid-air. Finally, the light wheel began to tremble uncontrollably. Wind chime. "You must die a good death," an angry old woman's voice echoed from mid-air. Silently, the light wheel completely dissipated and turned into large silver light spots, flying and falling one after another. Like raindrops. Those protruding spikes suddenly softened and twisted, turned into streams of black mist, and flew back to the woods below. Soon, with the sound of calm footsteps, Garen walked out of the dense forest, holding the mist crow formation pocket watch gently in his hand. "Do you know each other?" He looked at the wind chimes waiting outside. The latter nodded. "Continue." "The 2 people who escaped earlier were not caught," Garen said calmly. What do you recommend? There's nothing I can do about it. They're on the same level as me and they just came here at my invitation. Feng Ling spread his hands to show that he was helpless. You wasted too much time in that library. They would have gone away long ago. Then next one, Garen nodded and continued walking towards the woods outside. We can only find the stronghold nearby. The others must have received the message and evacuated. We can only intercept them when they leave, Feng Chime reminded. You show the way. In the next 3 days, Garen and Feng Zhong led the way and quickly attacked 7 strongholds. They were all secret strongholds of the Black Sky Society, and more than 20 members of the Black Sky Society were killed, including 4 elite members above the rank of Major General. They crossed directly into the Ennet border area and traveled quickly through the vast wilderness and forest. But then, the nearby strongholds all retreated to avoid their hunting range. Apparently, the Black Sky Society finally reacted and determined their approximate location. After many fruitless attacks, Garen simply let the wind chime lead the way, crossing the entire forest sea and inserting himself into the town area in the hinterland of Enite. Start to clear strongholds in human urban areas one after another. Near a town in Enite, in a small birch forest. White tree trunks stand tall one by one, and the ground is full of green lawns, mixed with some white flowers, and a few white butterflies flying back and forth among the flowers. Ansel, hasn't the target come out yet? 3 men in black robes were standing in the forest. They were watching a country road outside the forest quietly. Not yet, a woman's voice came from the man in black robe at the front. She lifted her hood, revealing an ordinary, slightly plump face. Why do we have to execute Navik? Can't there be another way? What method do you want? The man who spoke earlier showed a slight mockery. Navik hindered the actions of our branch, which has already determined his subsequent fate. And we should be grateful that we are on the side of the arbiter of fate. Stop having such naive thoughts, Ansel, the last person said in a lukewarm voice. His voice was hoarse and his age could not be heard. Ansel actually did not want to join the Black Sky Society branch, but she had no choice. Her husband chose to join. For the sake of family harmony, she had no choice but to join. But soon after, her husband was killed in a monster attack. So she was left alone again. She was assigned to this group from above. She didn't like the 2 people in the group. One of them was cruel and perverted, the other was selfish and vindictive. But she had no choice but to go forward. After joining the Black Sky Society, she also made many wrong things, but she could only continue to move forward hesitantly. Now, because of a trivial matter, an old friend who has worked together for many years has to be assassinated. Ansel felt more and more disgusted with this kind of life. I heard that a ruthless man who specializes in hunting strongholds has appeared in the border area. The superiors have attached great importance to it and set up a task force, codenamed Hunting the Mist Crow. A general from our branch here has also been transferred. Do you know? The hoarse-voiced man in black robes started chatting in a low voice. Many strongholds in the border area have been withdrawn. I asked why the branch has a lot more manpower recently. It turns out that so many strongholds have been withdrawn. Another person said in surprise, what is the situation now? I can still survive until now by opposing the headquarters. People. Yes, that man is very powerful. It is said that he was enraged because he was surrounded and attacked by the people above. At that time, he arrested an elite member of the headquarters and hunted the stronghold everywhere as revenge. The horseman clicked his tongue in admiration. Headquarters, although a hunting and killing team was set up, they still did not dare to go out, and now they are withdrawing again and again. Isn't that similar to the Royal Blood Tower and the Azure Dragon Swordsman? The last operation to siege the Blood Tower also failed. Another person followed and praised. Anyway, I got the news from my cousin. To the south of the town of Mezend, past the Maple Leaf Bridge, there is a possible hunting area for fog crows. Don't go there if you have nothing to do. Otherwise, the consequences will be unpredictable. The two chatted quietly for a long time, and soon, the sound of horse hooves suddenly appeared on the path outside the forest. The three of them immediately became quiet and hid in the woods. Before the horses appeared on the path, there was a muffled sound in the distance behind them. Bang! The ground was like an iron felt under a hammer. It was hit so hard that it almost started to vibrate. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 382. Grumble. A sharp, piercing siren rose into the sky, and a white vertical streak lit up in the sky behind him. It's the branch's alarm signal. 3 members of the Black Sky Society became alert at the same time. The branch was attacked. Ansel reacted immediately. What should we do now? Don't worry yet, the horseman was about to say something else. Suddenly, there was a strange squawking sound coming from behind again. It seemed that a large group of crows had gathered together, making it extremely noisy. The man suddenly remembered the news his cousin told him. There are also characteristics about the fog crow distributed by the headquarters. Damn it! This is a stronghold close to Ennet's headquarters. Are the people in the headquarters eating asterisk? How could the fog crow suddenly come here? He cursed angrily. Retreat, he growled, and was the first to turn around and run back. The other 2 followed closely. While running, Ansel's eyes had a strange glint, but no one noticed her. All the information and intelligence records of the 3 people are stored in the branch. If they do not respond after the alarm, they will be hunted down by the headquarters. So although they were helpless, the 3 of them still chose to go back and take a look first. Along the way, the 3 of them quickly took off their black robes, revealing their normal clothes underneath, and put away all the distinctive marks of the Black Sky Society. Pretending to be a spectator, he rushed towards the direction of the sound. In the middle of a large tract of birch forest, there was a huge circle area like a giant black cake, with 20 or 30 figures in black robes standing sparsely inside. Above the black circle, in mid-air, a ribbon of light golden airflow generally rotates and dances around the black circle area. The airflow circles in the air, like a dance. As the golden sunlight shines down, the ribbon becomes even more beautiful and slightly dazzling. But no one appreciated the scene at this time. All the men in black robes were staring at the sky beyond the golden ribbon. A small group of black mist was floating there, and above the black mist, there was a tall man wearing a black skirt and armor. The man has long golden hair, a handsome face, and 3 vermilion birthmarks between his eyebrows. Mist Crow Garen. Do you really want to start a full-scale war with our Black Sky Society? Among the people protected by the golden airflow, an old man slowly stood up. He was not wearing a hood, and his face was covered with wrinkles like old tree bark. He was holding a white wooden staff in his hand, with the head of the staff higher than his head. Since you made the decision to surround me and kill me, you should have thought about the possible consequences. Garen stared at the pale golden airflow in the air with interest. This ribbon-like translucent airflow gave him a surprise. A slight sense of threat. He had only recently discovered that by using the precise control of the fog crow, he could float him into the sky. With the black light array tool equipped by the royal family, he could move freely in the sky. As soon as he discovered this use, he immediately put it into use. Although this usage requires very precise control, it was so strong that the wind chimes were dumbfounded as if they were looking at a perverted monster. But Galen fully felt the convenience of this usage. So he devoted his energy even more enthusiastically to studying the usage of the mist crow formation. Wind Chime was completely speechless about this. In his opinion, being able to control each of the thousands of fog crows in a well-behaved manner, completely in line with one's own wishes, was an ability that was no longer something humans could achieve. The energy consumed alone is enough to exhaust an ordinary totem master in an instant. After coming back to his senses, Garen carefully observed the members of the Black Sky Club who appeared below. This time, he traveled thousands of miles deep into the hinterland of Enide. Under the guidance of Fengchime, he finally found a large-scale stronghold. As expected, there were nearly 30 members of the Black Sky Club below, and these members had no intention of releasing their totems to fight. If you do that, you won't be able to concentrate your power, and it will be easy to defeat them one by one. Instead, they injected all the power of their own totems and the light of the totems on the totems into two places. One is the magic array in mid-air. This golden airflow is constantly rotating around the black circle stronghold. It looks extremely beautiful and looming. The other one is a huge white stone statue on the black round ground. Only the upper body of the stone statue is exposed above the ground, and most of the lower body is buried in black soil. The carving is of a weird man with a dog's head and a human body. There is a curved horn on the top of the dog's head, a goat's beard on his chin, and strong muscles. A gauze garment hangs on his chest to cover his left chest, and one corner of the gauze garment is tied to his left shoulder. On a golden round buckle. It gives people a rough and ancient mysterious beauty. Are you okay yet? Garen looked at the stone statue below that was gradually shaking. Arrogant, the old man snorted, you will pay the price for your arrogance and ignorance. He struck the ground hard with his wooden stick. Rise. Suddenly, the cobalt stone statue on the ground opened its eyes. Its eyes are pitch black, with no whites and pupils, only two pitch black holes. There was a crash, and the black soil on the ground suddenly arched up. The huge stone statue of a kobold slowly pulled out its arms from the earth. He placed his hands on the ground on both sides and slowly pulled himself out of the soil. All the men in black robes avoided and made space. The kobold stone statue finally stood completely on the ground. It is astonishingly over 100 meters high. Its huge body is strong and perfect, and it is covered with white stone gauze. His black eyes stared at Garen in the air. A moment. The kobold opened its mouth and roared silently at Garen. It grabbed Galen hard with one big hand, like an adult grabbing flies and mosquitoes. The broad palm covered Garen's body with a black shadow. It actually explored the defensive range of the golden airflow and grabbed Garen directly. Garen's eyes narrowed slightly, and the black pocket watch in his hand began to pour out more and more black mist. A large amount of black mist continued to turn into fog crows, and the black crows continued to disperse and flow in all directions. From a distance, large groups of black crows were constantly pouring out from where Garen was, like a black river. The entire sky for several kilometers was sparsely covered with black crows. They attack any living creature within range, completely covering the originally golden sky with gray. It was as if black clouds were constantly moving. One of the black mist quickly turned into a huge black crow with a diameter of more than 10 meters, and hit the kobold's big hand head-on. The giant black crow's beak was extremely sharp, and its entire body raised its wings to form a pointed shuttle shape, piercing the air fiercely and rushing towards the giant stone statue of the kobold. Laugh. In the air, mid-air, a sharp and piercing whistle suddenly sounded. The giant black crow and the big hand of the kobold stone statue collided hard. Boom. The two were about the same size. Between the big white hand and the black fog crow, a large area of black mist and white gravel suddenly exploded. A ball formed in mid-air, causing a circle of spherical white air ripples. The big hand of the kobold stone statue only paused slightly before continuing to grab it in the direction of Garan. Is this the strongest spell formation in this branch? It's really powerful, Garan chuckled. The black light array under his feet suddenly lit up. With a scoff, he retreated sharply and turned into a black line. He instantly left the range of the kobold stone statue's giant hand and was suspended in mid-air again. Boom. The giant hand pressed down between the trees, knocking down a small piece of birch forest and leaving a deep palm print on the ground. The other hand of the cobalt stone statue actually silently slapped it horizontally, like a fan slapping Garen. This time the giant hand was faintly edged with a layer of black light. The old man on crutches in the center sneered. If the ancestral god statue is so easy to deal with, why do we still need to expend so much effort to activate it? Sir, if time goes on for too long, I'm afraid people from the Royal Alliance will do it, a woman in black robe beside him reminded in a low voice. It doesn't matter. After we deal with the Mist Crow, we have plenty of ways to explain that the governors and lords in this area are all our people. In order to resist the terrorists, it is natural to activate the ancestral god statue. Won't it be easier for everyone to change their clothes by then? The old man replied nonchalantly. But in this case, our plan will. What plans do you have to worry about now? People are coming to kill you, the old man stared, too lazy to pay attention to the woman. In mid-air, a giant hand with white edges and black borders slapped Galen fiercely, bringing up a large and powerful hurricane. This strong wind surrounded Garen from all sides, binding him in place and unable to move. Humph! Garen's face turned cold and he did not do any other dodge. He spread his hand holding the pocket watch forward. Hiss! At the same time, countless black mist gathered and enveloped Garen's position, forming a huge black torrent. The strange calls of a large number of fog crows were densely packed, buzzing like a seal, and the entire sky was noisy and chaotic. The black torrent suddenly formed into a black spike, fiercely facing the giant hand. Buzz! The violent impact exploded. The sound waves spread wildly, and no one could hear the sound. They could only feel pain in their ears, and their vision was shaken and blurred. Large jets of black air sputtered in the sky, continuously overflowing from the giant hand of the giant stone statue. The fog crow and the giant stone statue were in a stalemate. Garen was suspended in mid-air, just behind the black fog crow, quietly watching the black air sputtering from around him. There was no emotion on his face. The giant kobold statue was indeed very powerful, but it obviously lacked energy. He could feel that the strength of the stone statue was not really used. But he was different. He had used the Mist Crow formation to the extreme. The strong body he had gained from the secret martial arts training, coupled with the dragon's heart he had replaced, made his energy far beyond that of ordinary people, reaching a terrifying level. Coupled with the master level of precision mapping, it is completely easy to control the fog crow formation. Use it to its fullest potential. A large amount of black mist was splashed in mid-air, and turned into black crows again, screaming and flying towards the giant hand of the stone statue, constantly circling against the giant stone statue. Garen no longer looked at the fog crow formation that was in a stalemate with the giant stone statue, but looked down at the people of the Black Sky Society who were protected by the golden airflow. For Garen, who has the heart of the dragon, the consumption of the Mist Crow formation only occupies 1/3 of the totem light. The next step is to solve the golden airflow blocking the road. He actually still has some energy left. There were faint exclamations of shock from the people in the black circle. Garen smiled slightly, and the 3 red dots between his eyebrows glowed slightly red. He slowly raised his hand, and 8 invisible vortexes more than 1 meter wide slowly appeared in the air around him. Go! His eyes suddenly lit up. Roar! Along with the roar of the dragon, 8 snake-like red dragon heads suddenly flew down from the sky. It bit everyone in the Black Sky Society from different angles. Flying down like a waterfall. Looking from a distance, with Galen as the center, 8 slender red dragon necks flew down from mid-air, biting fiercely at the black circle below. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 383. 8 slender and ferocious dragon heads, like red ribbons, suddenly descended from the sky and pounced on the people of the Black Sky Society below. Hiss! Amidst the subtle hissing sound, the golden airflow in mid-air suddenly condensed into 8 small golden dots, blocking the front of the dragon head. One gold and one red collided hard. Roar! The manic roar of the 8-headed dragon echoed in the sky. The surrounding wood seemed to be swept by a hurricane. The huge sound waves shook off large leaves, forming a huge circular ripple that spread far in all directions. Ouch! The main head of the 8-headed dragon looked up to the sky and roared, and its 2 thick and powerful forelimbs crawled out of the void and condensed into a solid body. There were 2 muffled sounds, and the huge forelimbs fell to the ground with a crash. The 8-headed dragon seemed to crawl out of the void step by step, and the body behind him gradually condensed into an entity inch by inch. The terrifying body that was more than 20 meters long shocked the hearts of all onlookers. This terrifying beast seems to have crawled out of myths and legends, but now there is no hero or god to defeat it. The 3 birthmarks on Garen's eyebrows were so red and black that they were almost bleeding. He was suspended quietly in mid-air, and the huge 8-headed lizard dragon below was biting the golden airflow wildly. Click! Suddenly a crisp sound came. A crack suddenly appeared in the light spot condensed by the golden airflow. Immediately afterwards, the cracks spread rapidly and became larger, covering the entire light spot in an instant. There was a crash. One of the light spots shattered. Then the second, and the third. The slender and ferocious dragon head drove straight in and pounced on the people of Haitian society below. Everyone in the black circle immediately ran away frantically, with streaks of red light shining, apparently using a special escape technique. However, this technique can only speed up the attack for a short period of time. Before he could react, he was caught up by the faster 8-headed dragon and bit him in one bite. Screams and exclamations became a chaotic mess, and a group of black-robed men were completely scattered for a while, fleeing and retreating in all directions. Several men in black robes protected the old man and quickly fled towards the northwest. Their speed was much faster than the others. Several people seemed to form a black and red circular magic array, making the speed much faster for a while. The old man in the circle looked towards Garen from a distance, and he seemed unusually calm, without any trace of panic. His eyes were thoughtful, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Garen also looked at the old man from a distance, quite surprised by the other man's calmness. From a distance, he saw the old man opening his lips, as if he was saying something with lip language. "We will meet again." An amused smile appeared on Garen's face. Interesting. However, there were so many Black Sky Club members present and a huge stone statue of a kobold, so it was difficult for him to pursue them. The 8-headed dragon frantically bit the Black Sky Club members on the ground, almost one by one. Those who resisted and released their totems were bitten into 2 pieces by him, leaving them vulnerable to a single blow. This is naked suppression at the rank level, with no power to resist. Others wanted to run away, and the 8-headed dragon looked up to the sky and roared again. Roar! The violent sound waves spread to the maximum range, like a tsunami rolled up by white sound waves. A huge white ring spread out. In a forest in the distance, Ansel and 3 others rushed towards the branch. They were running directly on foot, with a faint black light flowing under their feet, and their speed was astonishingly fast. "We have to hurry up. Otherwise we won't be able to go back if the golden defense circle is activated," the horseman said urgently. "Otherwise, if we stay outside, the mist crows will definitely be repulsed, and it may be too late for us to go back now," another man whispered. "Not necessarily, this is the time for us to perform meritorious service." Ansel looked at the 2 people in front of him, and the idea in his mind became stronger and stronger. The 3 of them also fell silent and hurried on their way. Roar! Suddenly, a violent and dull roar came from the front. Boom! The leaves of the trees were severely crushed, and the sound waves brought an extremely powerful hurricane, severely blowing some big trees to their sides. A white sound wave hit the 3 figures head on. Buzz! Ansel couldn't hear anything all of a sudden. His whole head buzzed, and his ears were filled with the buzzing sound of a huge sound wave exceeding its limit. His mind was in chaos, his eyes were blurry, all the sights in front of him were blurred, and tears were flowing down the corners of his eyes. The three of them were like little bugs in the wind and waves, being severely suppressed by the huge sound waves, as if they were weighed down by an extremely heavy boulder. The three of them couldn't hear any sound at all, their eyes were blurred, and they had no choice but to hunch up and hug the trees and shrubs around them. Strong wind and sound waves rushed from the front in waves, causing the clothes of the three people to pull back and shake wildly. If you don't pay attention, you will be blown away by the huge sound wave. Big rocks and some thin tree trunks were directly picked up by the huge continuous sound and flung back violently. A large amount of grass, tree bark, some mutated bugs, and even a small group of jungle deer covered in white bone armor were all rolled up violently and thrown back. From time to time they hit the thick trees behind, making a dull and terrifying sound. Bone-cracking sound. The three of them hunched forward with difficulty, braving the hurricane of sound. "What is this?" the horseman shouted with difficulty. Most of the trees in front were blown down, and the scene in the distance could be vaguely seen. Ansel tried hard to raise his head and look forward. Finally, the noise stopped and everything returned to calm. There was a mess everywhere in the woods. The three people gathered together with lingering fears. What on earth was that just now? Was it the roar of some kind of monster? I wonder, maybe it's the branch's secret weapon. Ansel was about to speak when his expression suddenly changed. "Here we go again. Get down." The words have not yet finished. Roar. Another huge white sound wave crashed over. The three of them lay down on the ground to avoid being blown away by the huge sound wave and injured. The terrifying sound waves carried with them extremely powerful airflow, without any totem light, hit the surface of their bodies hard. This time it's much shorter. Within a few seconds, everything returned to calm. The three of them no longer dared to move forward and stopped in place, hesitating for a moment. "This is not far from the branch. We have to find a high place to see what is going on in the branch from a distance," Ansel suggested. "Indeed, we can't move forward rashly," the horseman immediately agreed. The three of them stepped back and quickly found a black hill. They quickly climbed up and looked towards the branch from the top of the hill. "Oh my God! What is that?" Ansel just stood up and looked into the distance, and his expression suddenly changed. The other two people also stood up and looked at the sky in the direction of the branch. They were speechless for a while, only the sound of heavy breathing was left. "What happened in the branch?" After a long time, the horseman whispered bitterly. In the distant sky that the three of them looked at, the clouds above the branch had been completely blackened. There was a large clear black cloud hovering there. It turned out to be a flock of blackbirds composed of countless black crows, hovering and floating like black clouds. Under the black clouds, a huge red eight-headed lizard dragon twisted its 8 heads wildly. Its slender snake-like neck looked down from time to time. Every time it lowered its head and raised it again, 1 or 2 more bodies of men in black robes would appear in its mouth. Blood dripped down the edge of its huge mouth. The 8-headed dragon was surrounded by countless black cloud crows, which were simply more ferocious than the most terrifying mutant monsters. At this time, there was absolutely no movement at the location of the branch, except for the cheerful roar of the 8-headed lizard dragon from time to time. Only then did the three of them notice the figure in black skirt and armor floating above the 8-headed lizard dragon. From a distance of several kilometers, one could clearly see the blood-like red light on the figure's forehead. "Is that the mist crow?" Ansel murmured. The 8-headed lizard dragon raised its head and roared joyfully from time to time, indicating that Garen was in a good mood. Although the entire branch below cannot see the situation underground, most of the Black Sky Club members on the ground have been eaten by the 8-headed dragon. Recently, it seems that the 8-headed dragon has eaten too much. Garen faintly felt that the eight-headed dragon seemed to begin to emit a faint poisonous gas and mist. This seems to be the waste dregs excreted after the eight-headed dragon digests it, but it is extremely corrosive. And as soon as the eight-headed dragon is released, the gas will naturally spread out, corroding all hard objects around it. It was even there around his body. This gas has a slightly fragrant aroma, which can make living things relax their vigilance and unknowingly fall into the danger of being corroded. Garen suspected that this was probably an auxiliary ability that the final ninth head was about to evolve. Soon, it finally calmed down below. The cobalt stone statue was tightly entangled in the fog crow formation. Because the Black Sky Society was defeated, it had no power and had to lie down on the ground, unable to move for a long time. Garen glanced far away in two directions. Hidden there were people from other forces who had arrived long ago. Judging from the aura composition, they should be members of the Royal Alliance. There may also be some civilians, ordinary noble totem masters and the like. They hid in the woods where they thought they were safe, looking towards the side to watch the excitement. But when Garen looked over, each of these people held their breath, deeply afraid of being discovered by him. The woods suddenly became silent, and even the sound of insects was cleared away. Garen smiled. He did not intend to deal with Ennet's Royal Alliance, which belonged to a different system. The other party obviously had no intention of coming over to say hello to him. Suddenly Garen looked up to the sky on the right, where a group of black giant eagles flew from a distance, flying rapidly in his direction. On the back of the giant eagle were figures covered in black skirts and armor, who were obviously members of the secret agency. The aura on them was dim and unclear. It seemed weak, but it felt very strong. Garen narrowed his eyes slightly. "Let's go, wind chime." The black light array under his feet flashed away, and his whole body shot down like an arrow, sinking into the forest sea. In an instant, the huge eight-headed dragon turned into a red light and disappeared into the forest sea. Countless black fog crows circled and danced, quickly gathered together, and then disappeared somewhere in the forest below. Garen and Feng Chime, who looked helpless, were wrapped in a small stream of black mist, quickly walking through the woods and leaving in the distance.